All right, it is exactly 12 o'clock, so we're going to get started. Hello, welcome to EdgeWorld 2019. Today we're going to be talking about security versus business innovation. I don't know about you, but for as long as I've been in this industry, those have been two concepts that have constantly played against each other. There always has been a trade-off. Today, we're going to look at that in the lens of DevSecOps and talk about some powerful new tools that Akamai's developed to help jumpstart your security and keep pace with the business. By way of introduction, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Les Waltman, and I'm a solutions engineer at Akamai. So my role is to work with our customers and help our customers take advantage of Akamai's products and maximize how it affects their business.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Jasson Morera. As a security project manager, I actually help customers from different industries to enhance the security posture on different attack vectors, including credential stuffing.
So we use DevSecOps to help keep your security configurations in pace with your business and what your business is doing. Today, we're going to talk about some new tools that Akamai's developed over the last year to help keep your Akamai security configuration up with best practices and in tune with all the DevOps that's happening elsewhere in your organization. So what we're going to do today is take a quick 5 minutes to do an introduction for DevOps and DevSecOps, just to get everyone on the same page. Then we're going to introduce you to those new tools that can help. Jasson's going to take you hands-on and go deep right into the tools, do some demos. Then we're going to talk about some additional tools and talk about best practices in applying those tools. So let's get rolling. Software is eating the world, and it really is. Software is becoming the platform that's driving business. Now, you hear of digital transformation cross industry, in every industry, from movies to defense system to retail to healthcare to life sciences. And what these businesses are doing is retooling their entire business processes, their products, with software. And software is really becoming the new platform for these businesses. And that software is changing how these businesses work. It's changing what products they offer. It's changing what job descriptions they have, what employees they have, what skills those employees need, and how those employees work. Software is becoming the competitive advantage to delight customers and increase profits. We hear of these new mega companies, relatively new mega companies like Google and Facebook, with eye-popping valuations in the trillions of dollars, and all these companies have is software. That's all that they are. So software drives the business, and these developers are the ones who actually make the software. So developers build the software that drives the business forward. So keep in mind that developers have a pretty important job. They've got a lot riding on their shoulders. They need to do a really good job. They need to get software out fast. They need it to help achieve the business objectives and help it to have their software move the business forward. And for that, developers are turning to this thing called DevOps. And I'm sure you've all heard of DevOps. It's a very popular buzzword out there, as I'm sure as you know. And just to cover the basics of DevOps in the context of today, it really means two things. The first is bringing new levels of productivity by bringing the traditional tents of developers and operations together into one. So instead of having a server team and an infrastructure team, we have one DevOps team that automates everything and tries to make the infrastructure and many things as possible code. And that brings us to the second area, which is automation. We try and take that code now and use tools to automate software deployment, to automate software testing, to automate as much as possible from when code is written to the point it gets into production, and then after that to the point where it's operated. So bringing that back to traditional security, we really have a little bit of a face-off here. On one side, we have the agile developer who's trying to get software increments out very fast to market and do it very quickly. And these people are typically writing code all the time. They're very flexible. They're taking what the business wants them to do and trying to figure out a way to do it. They typically want to automate. They typically want to push things out fast. And then on the other side, we have the security team who works. If you know security teams, if you're part of the security team, they work quite a bit differently. Security likes to manage change and control risk. They've had changes through stringent processes. They like to understand everything that's happened. They like to evaluate risk, consult the business, and take all facts into account before making any risk-based decision. And as you probably can figure out, agile development flies directly in the face of this. For example, security doesn't want to automate code pushes. They may want to evaluate code and test that code before putting it into production. And that, frankly, extends to Akamai as well. For example, those of you who use Kona Site Defender and the Kona rule set know that you probably want to test the rules against any new code that goes out before moving it into deny mode. So we have these two very different groups, different methodologies, both very important. So what do we do about it? Well, the way we see it, you really have two choices. The first is to keep things exactly the way they are. Assess and approve all changes that go into production manually. Conduct static and dynamic code analysis before code goes into production. Tune your WAF rules before new code goes into production. Inspect that code, approve, etc. And if you do this, you'll probably slow down the pace of change in your business. That may not be viewed too popularly, but also something called shadow IT might happen. And shadow IT is basically when people in your organization, in the era of the cloud, say, I'm not going to go through my corporate IT, my corporate security. I'm going to go out to a cloud vendor, use my credit card, buy the services myself, and I'm going to expense it. And then you've achieved the exact opposite goal of what you're trying to do. Instead of securing your business and managing risk, you have all this stuff happening out there that you don't even have any visibility into. And then the other option, of course, is to adapt. Just like network and server operations are moving towards DevOps, and waterfall development is moving towards Agile, security can change too. And DevSecOps allows security to take those same principles and apply them to how we operate. The idea is to put up guardrails, not gates. And that is what we're here to talk to you about. DevOps is happening. It is here in almost every organization in one form or another. Today, we're going to talk about how to take a DevSecOps approach to your Akamai security products. We're going to introduce you to these very sophisticated new tools, but powerful tools that help keep your security posture up with the change and pace around your business.
Thanks,
Jason?
All right, so DevSecOps. Well, it is about introducing security to early stages of the application development lifecycle. Normally there's one team that roll out a new application from beginning to end, and then they need to hand it over this application to another team to worry about security. And that's actually not good. And it's not efficient either, because if we keep security at the end of the pipeline, we're going to find ourselves back in the long cycles of application development that we're trying to avoid since adopting DevOps. That's why shifting security to the left is actually the right approach to ensure that we implement security best practices in all the application development cycle. And this has led Akamai to create tools to help you with this. For example, Property Manager API, or PAPI, which actually you can use to onboard new hostings to Akamai. And now we also have AppSec, which is the Akamai API for application security. With AppSec, you have direct access to your security configurations through the CLI. And here, you can actually create new configurations. You can update the configuration, export this configuration as a code, and even you can retrieve the list of hostnames that are protected by these configurations. Remove, add hostnames as needed in terms to protect these new environments that you are creating. And there are some cases where there is a new vulnerability or a new threat that require a custom rule. Well, with AppSec, we can create those custom rules directly from the CLI, modify the custom rules, and assign it to one policy, to multiple policies, to multiple configurations, and eventually change the status from alert to deny mode, right? So these are some basic examples of what we can do with AppSec. Here on the screen, we can see some of the commands that we can use, like active, create a configuration, clone a configuration, create a custom rule. But I know that it's not funny seeing on a screenshot, right? So what do you think if we do a live demo and see how AppSec works? So for this live demo, let me go back real quick to Luna so we can see the scenario that we're going to use. Let me see. Right. So over here, we can see the configuration that we're using is the DevSecOps configuration. It's the latest created one, version 8. We only have one single hostname protected by this configuration and one single policy and match target. So the idea of the demo is to add additional hostnames to this configuration, to this policy. Okay, so in order to use the AppSec, the first thing we need to know is the configuration ID that we want to edit or we want to work. In order to know this, you can just go to the URL bar, and over here you can see the configuration ID. I know that it's very small, but it is 41602. So that's the configuration ID that we're going to work with. Okay, let me go back to the terminal here. Right, looking good. All right, so the first thing I wanted to show you is an Akamai Object. So, oops, small typo. So the Akamai Object was going to show you all the commands that you can use here, the same that we just see in this screenshot. Okay? It's actually pretty easy to configure the API. And matter of fact, if you go to the Launchpad section in the whole, you'll see one of the missions is to get your API credentials, which is basically what you need to do in order to install the Object. Once you get that Object installed, let's see what we just checked on the Luna terminal. Let's see here in the Object. So let me clear this a little bit. So if we do an Akamai Object versions command, and we need to know the config ID. So in this case, the config ID is 41602. And let me add the variables at the end so we can see more information. Okay, so we're seeing here that we have the latest version, which is version 8, based on version 6. It is active in staging and it is active in production. Now, let's take a look at the hostnames that are protected by this configuration. For this, we just need to do a selected hostname. And the config ID again. And in this case, we need to know the version that we want to see. We can put the latest version, or we can just put something like prod, which is the one that we want to see. All right, so in this case, as you can see, there's only one hostname, but I'm pretty sure that there are a bunch of hostnames that we can protect by this configuration. Let's take a look at those hostnames in that case with an selectable command. So again, it's an Akamai Object. In this case, it's selectable hostnames. Version 8. And actually, there should be a lot of hostnames on board here. So let's maybe focus on those related to DevSecOps. Oh, yep. All right, seems that still having a typo. Thanks. Yep. There you go. Thank you. So we see that there's multiple hostnames here, and it seems that you have a hostname there, man.
I do.
So it's not protected. You have a hostname unprotected. So let's fix that. Let's protect that hostname with the configuration. In order to do that, we need actually 4 basic steps. The first step is to have a configuration that is not active neither in staging nor in production, meaning an inactive configuration. Then the second step is adding this hostname to the configuration. Third step is adding the hostname to a policy to be protected by this policy. And the last step is to active this configuration to staging and then production. So first step is to have an inactive configuration. To do that, we just need to clone the active configuration in production. So with the clone command, we can do that. And we want to clone based on version 8. All right, so now, as you can see, we have version 9 created. Step number 2 is adding the hostname to the configuration. It's pretty straightforward, just an Akamai Object command of add hostname. This case is lwalt. Configuration ID. And version, in this case, is going to be version 9. All right, so now we have 2 hostnames protected by this configuration. Next step, let's add this hostname to a specific policy. I'm going to jump real quick to the Luna configuration, because as you can see here, we only have one policy, that is the DevSecOps AAG policy. I'm pretty sure that you're familiar with this and that you know that we can have multiple hostnames, multiple match targets. Basically, a match target is just associating a policy with the hostname that we want to protect by that policy. In this case, we only have one match target. It's number 1. And since we can have multiple match targets here, we need to know the ID of this match target that we're going to edit. So in order to know that, going back to AppSec, we are going to do a match targets command. Again, the configuration, 41602, and version 9. Okay, just after a second, we're going to see that there's only one match target, 2006199. That's the one that we want to edit. In order to edit the match target, we just need to know Akamai Object, modify match target 2006199, and we want to add a hostname. It's going to be Mr. Waltman hostname. Config ID and version. All right, so we just updated that match target. Now that's step number 3, right? The final step is actually activating this configuration to staging and production. So let's do that real quick. Akamai Object, activate, config 41602,
you have a typo there.
Version.
You have a typo on config.
Okay, thanks.
There's also a typo on the add hostname. It's not lwalt.
On which one?
On your line above, the hostname that you added to the match target.
Oh, no, but it was updated, actually. Oh, I see what you mean. There or here. So you will be unprotected. Well, there you go. All right. Thank you. So let's activate this configuration. One 602, version 9. We're going to activate this into a staging network. And we need someone to be notified about this. So I'm going to add my email here. All right, so we're going to see that this configuration is going to be in the activation or pending activation status in a bit. Let's check real quick in Luna what we just did here. So let me go back to Luna, to the portal over here. I'm going to refresh here. And now, as we can see here, that's created is version 9. Let's go here. Now we have 2 host names protected by this configuration. It's loading. We have 3 host names in this policy. One is the typo one, and is activating in staging. So, as we just saw, it is pretty easy to use the AppSec. Oh, it's gonna remove real quick. There you go. So as we just saw, it's pretty easy to use the AppSec to add host names to a configuration and to a policy. But it's not only that. I mean, that's like the first step, but we still have the tuning, the false positive analysis. We still have the KRS updates that I'm pretty sure that you're very familiar with those. So with all of these, we sometimes end in this situation. Let me see what's happening. There you go. We ended in this situation. We need basically to choose how much security we want for these host names and how fast we want it. When it's maybe talking about tier 2 or tier 3 host names, those that are not like the priority #1 host names, you may end just leaving those host names unprotected, which is not good. So basically, it's either security or agility, and it's actually a tough call. But luckily, there is automatic attack groups. So automatic attack groups, or AAG, is an alternative setup of your firewall. It's for easy firewall management, so you don't need to worry about editing or updating individual rules. Yes, we still have the risk groups, the normal risk groups that we are used to, but these risk groups has rules that are less prone to false positive. And if there is new rules, for any new vulnerability or threat, those rules are going to be automatically added to these risk groups without even the need of a new WAF configuration. So it's pretty good. You don't need to worry about that. It's pretty easy to set up. Just need to select the action per risk group. And now we have a penalty box option. With this penalty box option, if there is a malicious user that is triggering the SQL injection risk group, we can keep blocking this malicious user for up to 10 minutes with this rate control feature, which is good at the end. So AAG is basically a perfect complement to AppSec. And AppSec is a great complement to our other APIs, like Property Manager APIs. So let's say that you're developing a new application. You are in the UAT or QA phase. So you use Property Manager API to onboard those hostnames to Akamai. Then use AppSec to add those hostnames to a security configuration. And finally, you can add those hostnames to an AAG policy where they're going to be protected since the beginning. And, well, that's what we want with DevSecOps, right? The next thing is just having visibility of the events that are happening in our environments. And Les here can help us with that part.
Sure, thank you. So we're not blind to the fact that you have a very, very, very large attack surface that extends way outside of anything that you have at Akamai today. So we're detecting all these events, targeting you at the edge. How do we harmonize that with the events that you're seeing on your other infrastructure outside of Akamai? Well, most organizations have a SIM, or a security incident event monitoring system. And that's a system that collects and correlates all your logs. And we have a SIM connector for Kona and our other security products where the data that we're observing at the edge, the attacks, the alerts, the denies, can be fed directly into your SIM. And here's how it works. We have an API, it's a pull endpoint, and your SIM reaches out and pulls down the data. The data is available in text CEF format, which is basically comma-separated output. And then you can map each field in your SIM to meaningful data like source IP address, destination host name, etc. And for the most popular SIMs that our customers use, that being Splunk, QRadar, and ArcSight, we actually have a SIM connector, which is basically a module you install in your SIM, so those logs that are pulled down can be automatically put into your SIM. Now, what's the advantages of having Akamai security events in your SIM? Well, first off, you can correlate events that are happening elsewhere, maybe on your network firewall, with events that are happening at the edge. Maybe an attacker's hitting your website or your production API, which is coming through Akamai, and they're also trying to hit your network firewall. This can correlate the two together. You also probably have an alert process that goes for every event that goes through your SIEM. Maybe a certain thresholds or certain classes of incidents go through an alerts workflow where people get pages or alerts pop up in a SOC. Well, now you can have your Akamai security alerts go through the exact same workflow as your existing security events. And one thing we hear from customers a lot is they want all the log data that we retain for 30 days to be retained for a lot longer. Well, when the data is in your SIEM, you basically own it, and you can control their retention for as long as you like. You don't have to delete anything ever. The SIEM connector is really a popular module that people, customers are using more and more with Kona. So kind of throwing a lot out there today with a lot of different concepts. We want to talk about good use cases for doing automation and where you can get the most value of it. First off, any repetitive administrative task that you're doing over and over again, it's a great use case for automation because automation can eliminate a lot of the human work. That makes things cheaper, it makes things happen faster, and makes it less error prone because computers make errors less than we do. Also, you can apply a single change across multiple policies. So let's say there's a brand new vulnerability that hits the street tomorrow, and Akamai has a custom rule that will act as a virtual patch to mitigate that vulnerability at the edge. If you have 10 security policies, today you have to go in, manually apply the custom rule in each policy, push it to staging, test it, then push it to production, test it. And if you have 10 policies and across 5 security configuration files, that's a lot of work. With DevSecOps, you can write, in the AppSec API, you can write a script to automate all of this. So you can get the patches out quicker and reduce your workload. You can also integrate with other security systems. So you have another security system that actually is pushing data. Let's say you detect a malicious actor in your network, your SIEM or IDS system says this IP address is bad. You can use DevSecOps with our network list API to automatically put that IP address on a blacklist so the edge will start blackholing and blacklisting, denying traffic that you've decided to deny elsewhere in your organization. And also, if you have an existing DevOps workflow, a CI/CD, a continual integration, continual deployment workflow, you can actually integrate Akamai directly with your workflow. So let's say you have a workflow that turns up a new host name, a new instance of your application. Well, you can use our Property Manager API to implement the CDN configuration. You can use our Certificate Management API to deal with the SSL certificate, or you can have wildcard SSL certificates. And you can use the AppSec API to then protect that new host name. So this gives you the full ability to onboard host names and onboard everything to Akamai pragmatically. And the last thing is automated reporting. A lot of times our customers have a very custom reporting metric that they want, something very specific about their configuration. But our reports out of the box don't do that. Well, with DevSecOps, you basically have all the data at your fingertips pragmatically, and you can create whatever reporting you want. And there's one more, audits. A lot of times our customers want to audit to make sure all their properties have protection, make sure someone didn't remove some protection accidentally. The good news with DevSecOps in the AppSec API, you can actually automate your own audits. You can have an audit every hour to make sure all of your host names are protected. And if there's something that goes unprotected for some reason, you can have it fire an alert. So there's lots of good use cases that save time, money, and increase efficiency. There's also some times where you want to consider whether using automation is worth it. First off, if you have a task that you're only going to do one time or very infrequently, you may not want to invest the time in writing automation. It often takes a lot longer to implement automation than doing a task once. But once you've done the task 5 times, 10 times, whatever your number is, the automation starts to be much quicker and have a payoff. So you need to make sure that the payoff of investing in automation versus the savings you get is going to be worth it. Also, some changes require you to make a decision. They require looking at data and making a very, very detailed analysis. If a human has to make the analysis, in some cases, not every case, it may not make sense to actually have an automation take place after humans made a manual decision. Also, you may have modifications that are in no way connected to automated systems at all. If there's one-time modifications that people need to go in and do from time to time, you may find that there is diminishing returns on automating those. So there's lots of times where you want to use DevSecOps, sometimes when you're not able to. So how do I take that and actually action it? How do I implement DevSecOps in my environment? Well, first thing we recommend is look at the tasks you do and review places where there's opportunity to achieve the maximum benefit. And those are the things you want to tackle first. You want to get the maximum benefit first, and then once you've invested in it, figure out where you might be able to get additional benefit. Second, are you leveraging automated attack groups? Now, automated attack groups, again, is a substitute for the Kona rule set that we've had for many, many years. And what it does is a lot of the rule tuning, automatically, so your security posture is kept up to date and requires less maintenance. The trade-off is the protection isn't as tight. So what a lot of my customers do is they take their tier 1 applications, put them with Kona rule set with a very tight customized policy. They invest a lot of time in that. And then they have tier 2 applications, tier 3 applications, maybe applications that don't have any PII or any financial critical data, and they have automated attack groups protecting those. Automated attack groups would allow you to have more security because you're investing less time on all your sites, investing more time on your crown jewels. Also, how does your organization want to consume log data? Is there efficiencies? Can you make better leverage of log data? So, sometimes when we do new things, we need help. How do you get help? First off, you are the best place in the world to get help on DevSecOps and Akamai. You're right here at Edgeworld. We have an expert bar. Jasson hangs out there a lot. We'll be around here afterwards. There's lots of expertise here. While you're here for the next day and a half, please take advantage. Ask lots of questions. Get lots of information. Don't let this opportunity pass you by. Also, talk to your account team. Your account team, your project manager, your architects, engineers. They understand your intricacies of your business, understand what you're looking to do, and can help. Also, we have something called the DevOps Readiness Review, where as a paid engagement, our enterprise architects can go in and assess your environment. It's not the best case for everyone in every situation, but it's something to consider. We also have an Akamai community where lots of our customers ask questions. So you can go and see if someone else has had the same challenge you're having. And ask a question if someone else has it. And if something breaks, you go to Akamai technical support, and they're always there to help. So I want to take the last 5 minutes or so and turn the floor over to you and see if you have any questions. I think we have a microphone traveling around, so does anyone have any questions? Did we answer every single question you could possibly have? There's one right there.
I came in a little late, but understanding the permissions needed by the person doing this through CLI, right? Mm-hmm. So what do they have to have? Is it an application identity? Is it a personal identity? Does it support? We use single sign-on, so does CLI support those kind of things?
So here's how that works. Typically, it starts with a username, and that username is the user that all the API requests come under. So it can be a person's username. We generally recommend that you create a specific system user in Luna that's going to be solely used for doing API tasks. Then you can take that user and define just the narrow permissions that you need to do the APIs. And then from within Luna, there's a manage API credentials section where you can actually, as that user, create an API key, which is basically authentication tokens that you feed into the CLI. And that allows the CLI to authenticate in as Luna and execute all the calls as that user. We have, I don't know if you've seen, Jason and I are wearing the shirts. We have something called Launchpad that we've launched, which is our new DevOps training initiative. And there's a specific module for configuring credentials and putting them into the CLI. So that's a good place to start.
So are you guys looking at supporting it through personal? I mean, that's great, but I'm a security guy. I want to see who did this for real.
Right. So it's the same thing as a username. So if you you have all requests going as a generic user, then at your application level, you need to control who has access to the application. So if you're writing an application with DevSecOps, you may have an automated system doing it entirely where there's not a human. Maybe it's cron jobs just kicking off scripts. Then it's not a person doing it at all. It's your system doing it. If you have a case where people are making decisions and then using the AppSec API to then action those systems, you need to log it on your system's end before the call is made. So it becomes part of your application. Okay. Any other questions? Chris, just microphone's coming.
With the AppSec API, are you able to move selected host names under the match targets easily from one to the other? Or do you have to literally do multiple commands to say remove it from match target 1 and then add to match target 2?
Well, actually, with the AppSec, you can do it in one single script. For example, if I get that correctly, the idea is to move, for example, one hostname from match target 1 to match target 2, right? So yeah, with one single command, you can remove the hostname from that match target. It's basically a modify match target command to remove the hostname, and then you need to add it to the new one. Yeah, it's two separate commands, but if you're doing that multiple times, you can create a script for that.
So yeah, what we're saying, I guess, is it is two commands, but when you're writing a script, it really doesn't matter.
I think there's a question over here.
So the microphone's just coming. There you go.
Thank you. The question is about how to integrate with other SIEMs like Splunk, right? I have set up API like at the beginning, quite a few years ago. We're trying to get logs. And when we received the logs, we realized Akamai logs is very difficult for us to analyze. We had to piece them together, and it becomes quite challenging. And that was like 4 or 5 years ago. Now we're using Splunk. You said you have some sort of agent working. What kind of logs? Is there very easy to read or easy for Splunk to process when you pass to Splunk?
So yes, we've received that feedback a lot. And because of that feedback, we have introduced the SIEM connector that we spoke about. So SIEM connector basically is a piece of software that you put in Splunk and very transparently feeds the Akamai data and maps it right into Splunk. So the idea is, on the Akamai side, enabling the SIEM connector is literally 2 clicks in a security configuration and a push to production. On the Splunk side, it's installing the software, putting API keys that you need to generate, and then the data should come in and map. If you go to developer.akamai.com or learn.akamai.com, there's instructions on how to do it. And Johnny, or we can work with you, your team can work with you to implement it.
So it's already mapped and easier for us to, retrieve. Second question is on the report, right? I know here you mentioned one of the use cases is report. We do have reports, and we're using basically go through Luna, get a report, and we have to regularly send to folks, right? When you do report here, are you saying that you're getting way more information than the report we're setting up currently through Luna?
So there's 2 kinds of reports. There's reports on how you're configured, and there's reports on the bad stuff that's happening. So reports on how, we don't really provide too many reports in Luna on how things are configured. Typically, you go into the configuration. So DevSecOps and the AppSec API specifically is a way for you to create those reports. If you want a list of protected host names or a list of policies and how that's connected, it's a good way to generate that. For events that are happening, that's where the SIEM connector comes in. And all the same data that our SIEMs, the web security analytics, and our tools use is available to you through the SIEM connector. So our tools basically take that same data and make what we think is some very useful insights to you, and you can then take that data and create custom insights and custom reports. We just have 2 minutes left. Is there any further questions? Perfect. Well, thank you very much for coming. I know lunch is available. Please take a moment to open the app and rate this session if you liked it, and if you don't, come talk to this guy. Thank you very much for joining us here, and have a good afternoon. We'll be around if you have any questions.